Greetings and welcome to the leadersHum series. Today, we have with us Peter F. Gallagher, a change management expert, international speaker, author, and leadership alignment coach. Peter speaks on the leadership of change management, leadership change alignment, and the benefits of change management gamification. As a speaker, Peter has presented strategic transformation leading practices to government entities, CEOs, audiences globally, leadership teams, and professional membership conferences. For over 30 years, Peter has been helping organizations, leaders, and employees change, improve, and transform through his keynotes, masterclasses, and change management workshops, projects, and programs. We're extremely honored to have him with us today. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much for having me, Adi. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us today, Peter. To begin with, Peter, you're a pioneer and one of the top leaders in change management. Can you give us some highlights from your journey and what it truly means?
So yeah, I'd have to look back over the last 30 years. So for the last 30 years, I've worked in about 30 different countries. I've been involved in aerospace, defense, energy, finance, manufacturing, mining, and pensions. I've worked for organizations such as Bombardier Aerospace, NCR, Shell, Ernst & Young. I've been both an internal and external consultant, and I've been involved in manufacturing, quality, Lean Six Sigma initiatives, operational excellence, EPR implementations, CEO special projects, major organizational change and transformation. My clients have included Aramco, BP, Boeing, Rolls-Royce, General Electric, and Dow, to mention but a few. And when I look back at the projects or programs that were successful, they had a strong change management and communication element. But the ones that stood out, the ones that were really successful, those were the ones that had change sponsorship, change leadership alignment, and a behavioral change element. So people in change management have always fascinated and intrigued me. It's my passion. And when you find your passion, your work no longer feels like work. Now I'm back in the UK. I have worked there for 5 years as an EY Advisory Services Director. Since I've returned, I've wrote 12 books. I've developed my own change management framework, concepts, models, and assessments. And I'm now rolling out the leadership of change online training, as well as designing gamification offerings to develop both the change leadership skills and knowledge for my employees and clients. And as you said at the start, I'm an advisor to C-suites. I write, consult, and speak about their leadership of change.
That's truly inspiring. It's truly inspiring to see that someone who has a passion for their field has chosen it as a career option. I admire the courage of you doing so. Moving on to the second question. In recent years, organizations have faced massive disruption, and we've seen the importance of change management for organizations to operate during COVID. What are some of the practices that we as leaders should implement to ensure that change can take place successfully?
So a bit of background on how the world's changing. So millenniums and COVID have changed employees' attitudes to work. Add in the fourth industrial revolution, and the way we work, the way we socialize and live will change forever. What is clear to me that organizations with superior leadership of change capability will have significant advantage against their competition and will stay ahead in the marketplace. So let me talk about implementation of change management. I talk about a spectrum of how to implement change. And there's three main areas in that spectrum: leadership and sponsorship and implementation. In the middle, you've got employee change adoption, and at the far end, you've got employee support. So let me do a little bit of a deep dive on those. So first, leadership, sponsorship, and implementation. This is about getting effective and proactive sponsorship, aligning the leadership team, ensuring they know their change leadership responsibilities. And this is supported by a change management framework to implement the change program, achieve benefits realization, and that return on investment. I focus on leadership, sponsorship, and implementation area. And the reason I focus here is I think these are the guys that have the resources to give to the change team. They also have the agenda time in the organization. And when you work with them, I think you get a high level of success and change. The second area of focus is still important. That's focusing on the employee change adoption. So the leaders and the sponsor and the change team will work with the employee through the change transition. And they have to give them awareness, understanding, involvement in the change, learning a new way of working, and then the motivation to sustain that change. And I call this the OLEM employee change model. And then I think that the third one we now live in a time what I call the age of the employee. We have to give the more focus to employee. People are leaving their jobs. They want to be treated. They want to be engaged. And organizations and leaders really need a strategy and a service offering to ensure the well-being of employees. So this third element, if you like, employee support, is about taking the employee through that journey, especially in times of change, to ensure they've got mindfulness, they've got involvement, and we've got engagement with them.
Wow, that is truly interesting, like how you could build a framework around something that is so hard to prepare for. Crisis and change is not something that we can learn without going through them. And having a framework that can help us go step by step and still manage to come out successfully. Thank you for telling us that. Peter, we continually talk about and see quotes that 70% of change and transformational programs fail due to poor strategy or execution or many other reasons. What is your 5-step approach to leadership alignment, and how can we as leaders help in aligning organizational goals with the employees' goals?
That's another good question. So I think when I work with leadership teams, a lot of them try to focus on their normal day-to-day job. And what we really need them to do is split some of that time and focus on the leadership of change. And to me, they're two very different skills. So the question set I ask most CEOs and their leadership teams before they embark on that change journey or transformation. Five key questions. Do you understand your organization's change history? Have you been successful at it before? Do you have a change vision? Are you aligned on your strategic objectives? Are you a high-performing team? And then that key one I always ask, does your team have change leadership skills to lead the change or improvement that your organization is facing? And these are typical questions that most leadership teams don't do until they're hit with a big change, something like COVID, the fourth industrial revolution. So if I break down those steps, I'll start at step 1, perform a change history assessment. So I go in, I get the employees to fill out an assessment. And what I'm really after is data and insights into how the organization implemented change before. What lessons can we learn? Can we use those to mitigate weaknesses, and can we use the good things to enhance the future success? But this gives me data to go to the leaders. So I bring that data with me in the rest of the steps, but step 2 is one-to-one interviews. So I interview each one of the leadership team. I'm really looking for gaps. What's their feeling towards the change? But I also ask them in that meeting where the organization's priorities are in terms of their priorities, because the CEO might have 10 priorities at the top list and it'll come down from 1 to 10. But when I go in and ask each member of that leadership team what the order is, they will put their order in personal preference or else in personal preference of their department and people. So we've got to find out where that is. This third step then is bring all that leadership team and those leaders into a workshop and work on how do we align these priorities. So align the priorities and importance of terms of 1 to 10 or whatever number it is. And then the most important thing for that workshop is, where does change fit with this? Because you can't do all the 10 priorities and ignore change. So are we serious in change? And as we are going through these workshops, we're starting to build our change vision. So step 4 then, like any team, you can't implement a major change or win a football match unless you work at your team performance. So I do a couple of sessions on team performance. Are we a high-performing team? Is there trust? Is there commitment to the goals? And I work with that. And then the last one's my favorite. So that's about a workshop. So I have to build leadership change capability into those leaders. So I do this using experiential learning, and I use change management gamification, which you've mentioned at the start. I'm a great supporter of moving away from static PowerPoint slides and using experiential learning. You cannot learn how your stakeholders will react to change or understand your own self-awareness from PowerPoint slides. So I love gamification because it's an interactive and dynamic way for employers to learn both change management skills and knowledge using game characteristics. So knowledge is the information acquired through sensory input, reading, watching, listening. But the skills are the ability to apply that knowledge in a particular situation. And that's when they need to apply that in a change. So gamification provides both. The leaders are given a case study to work on in a workshop in teams of 4 for 1 day. And they've got to select 10 different change tactics and see how they reflect on the stakeholders. So 10 rounds. They discuss 4 change concepts and they pick one and then they apply it in the game and they find out how the stakeholders react. So now they're starting to think, how would my employees react to implementation of change? And those stakeholders can either react neutral, positive, or negative. And the team that gets the most points and moves their stakeholders around those 10 steps wins the game. But the main benefit of that workshop is they're doing team building, and that's a good benefit too. But the main benefit is when they come out of that workshop the next day, they can go in and apply those skills and knowledge in their workplace on change, and they have some experience and skills to build on.
Wow, that is very nice. What especially was very interesting is that you choose to do one-on-one interviews of everyone in an organization instead of just focusing on leaders, checking the priorities of people and understanding how they feel about certain tasks, and then generating a program or a workshop around that. That says that what you have developed is very well thought and very well practiced. Thank you for sharing that with us. In
Thank
your
you.
book,
We're practical, Addy, because it's
yeah,
not always practical to interview everybody, but I try to interview as
exactly.
many of the people as I can.
Wow. Moving on, in your book, Change Management Leadership, you've spoken about 3 critical leadership responsibilities to implement change. Can you tell us more about this AMI, about the AMI change leadership model?
Yeah, so the reason I gave the background to my 30-year careers was that I learned, after a long time, that unless you've got leadership that are aligned and proactive and effective in terms of leading the change, then you won't have success. So my 4th book is about these 3 critical responsibilities. And they are, first of all, they've got to articulate that vision. They've got to model a new way of working, and then they've got to intervene for sustainable change. And let me just deep dive into those and start with the articulate the change vision. Too often I go into an organization and the leaders are blaming the change team for not giving the vision. The leaders of the organization have got to know that vision, and they've got to go out and articulate it. So for me, change leadership is the aptitude to develop and articulate a vision that will inspire the organization to the new future. A compelling vision that inspires employees with purpose and is aligned to the organization's strategies and belief. And that has to be done. And every leader in that workshop in the alignment session has to know that vision and inspire the employees. The next is model a new way. The organization will adopt a change when the leaders show and model a new way. Modeling a new way of work is the only task leaders of change do not need props for, or nor can they delegate. They have to be seen by the employees to be modeling a new way, to be following the new way of working. And if they don't, the employees will just say, well, it's not important. This change is not important to us, so why bother? And then the third, and they all are very important, but this is where you really have to push the change so it doesn't get unstuck. Intervene to ensure sustainable change. If they see an employee, no matter what level in the organization, is not following a new way, they've got to do a polite and firm intervention to say, you're not following a new way of working. This is the way we're going to work from now. Whatever is following a new process, working a system, adopting a new behavior, they've got to do that intervention. Without intervention from the leaders, the change will not be adopted or sustained, and there can be no exceptions. So just summarizing on that, the 3 things are: organizational change leadership is about effectively and proactively articulating that vision, modeling a new way, and intervening to ensure sustainable change.
Wow. Especially the last bit of intervening to find out if something's not working or something's going wrong. Because we all know that change is not something that is easy. People struggle with it. And that's why where your framework comes handy, to actually where leaders jump in and check if everything's working. That's truly interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Moving on, Peter, do you have any final anecdotes to share with our audience, or someone young who's joined working, like a young leader who's joined work like me, and we want to get inspired into how change works? Anything final to tell us?
Yeah, I have many stories. So I mentioned at the start, in the first step of the alignment process, I do the change history assessment. So to me, that's very important, because if you're going into an organization, you have to learn its culture, but you also want to see how it's handled change before. So this is a story I'll tell. So, I went into one organization and we do the change history assessment. It gives me insights about the organization, what went well, what didn't go so well, and then it gives me something to change and improve on. And it's about over 30 questions, and it's key categories like, was there sponsorship? Was the employee's workload taken into consideration? Was there good communication? elements that can either enable or be barriers to change. And I asked those questions, and it's on a Likert scale. So that every employee answers that survey on a Likert scale. They get 5 points, so they strongly agree, right down to very strongly disagree, 1 point. And I always put that into a marking score. And there was this one particular organization we got the score back on. And there's one question I always look at, and it's question 28. And it asks, will future change be successful in the organization? And this is the employees' data. So the leaders can't ignore it, or the employees can't say it's not ours. This is your data. I also compare it with other organizations. So will future change be successful? And on this one occasion, the score was really bad. So let me digress a second. If I was a gambler and I was playing the roulette wheel, in America, I would get odds of 47.3% if I put all my money on the black. In Europe, it's slightly better, about 48.65%. So this organization, the survey came back and it was 46.2%. So I went to the leaders and I said, guys, something has to radically change for your change to be successful. You need to change it. And we've got a list of things we can do. And if you don't accept that, then you might as well go off to Vegas, because you'll have a better return on investment. So these are the stories you pick up. And I'm not criticizing the people, because in change, you have to love and respect the people. But these are some of the things as a change professional, you have to go and have those difficult conversations with the leaders while they're in denial as well.
That sounds like a tough job, Peter. I have to ask, now that you're finished with your book, what is next for you?
So I finished the writing. The books, they still need a lot of current attention and publicity, but it's really great to do the books. So I finished the writing. So now I'm really focusing on bringing those books to market as products. So in early autumn, we will have Leadership of Change Online Masterclass A. So you'll be able to sign up to the course and do a one-day course on leadership alignment. How do you lead change around those 10 steps I mentioned earlier? Mm-hmm. I'm also going to put my gamification. So my gamification is done in a workshop now with Matt, a big mat in the room, like a Monopoly board. I'm now taking that into an app. I'm very excited about it. So what we've learned about COVID is you can't always do face-to-face. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to have an option with the gamification to have either go face-to-face, virtual, or a hybrid. And the app is coming out in September. So I'm really excited about it, because it has all the learning material inside it. They'll be able to read about the stakeholders, they'll be able to see a stakeholders' reactions, how they go around the board. So a few great months ahead. I'm really excited about it, but I will still continue to speak and write and consult on the leadership of change.
Wow, thank you. We are excited to see more from you, and we've truly enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a great and insightful interview. I'm sure our audience would have loved this.
Thank you, Adi. It's my pleasure. Have a good day.
Have a good day, Peter. Thank you.